And joining me now is Filippo Grandi, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. I'd like to get your reaction, because this obviously affects the refugees as well as the rest of the world, maybe more so than any of the rest of us, and having come through the terror of leaving Ukraine.
You know, I always say that, of course, we need to do more for people in Ukraine, bring them more food, more medicines, more blankets. We're trying to do our best together with the government of Ukraine. The reality is that people flee because they're afraid of shelling, of bombs, and now all these allegations of killings. So that's really why these people are fleeing, and unless trust is rebuilt, they will not go back. It's not just a matter of rebuilding homes, but also rebuilding trust. This is really the crux of the matter right now.
So now there are more than 4 million Ukrainian refugees in Eastern Europe. We certainly expect more. How long can the countries, those border countries on NATO's eastern flank, care for so many people, even with all the help from the UN and other aid groups?
Yeah, look, I've just come from a visit to the region. I was actually in Western Ukraine myself, and then I was in Poland for a couple of days. The refugee flow at the moment has slowed down, luckily. And this is why the priority is to assist people inside Ukraine as much as possible to help them stabilize there in areas that are relatively safe for them. This is now priority number one. Meanwhile, there are, as you said, 4.2 million now refugees scattered in neighboring countries. Poland alone took more than half of them. And those states around Ukraine are doing really a fantastic job in caring for these people. It's fantastic materially, but it's also a very caring attitudes towards them. But they do need help. They do need international assistance. That's why the UN, my organizations, are there to help them with cash, with shelter, with especially protecting the most vulnerable, the young women. There's so many of them, the children, many of them are separated from their families. So lots of work and very complex given the speed of this exodus and its very size.
To what do you attribute the slowing of the flow of refugees? Is it that they can't get out, or that some people want to go back, or that the Ukrainian advances, the successes around Kyiv, have encouraged people that they could actually stick it out?
I think it's a combination of these factors. Also, the people who went out first were people with more connections in Europe and perhaps a bit more resources. Now I have seen near the border, but on the Ukrainian side, families with less resources. Many families do not want to separate from the men. You know, the men stay in Ukraine. They are conscripted in the army. They cannot go out. And then I think that the military evolution has given some breathing space. So you have a combination of all of this. I would say that we are in wait-and-see mode. But if the war continues, even if it is a protracted war, I think we may see more displacement, certainly inside Ukraine, unless this ends.
In fact, intelligence services are predicting a very protracted war, that this is a brief breathing spell, if you will, as Russia regroups, and they've got the May 9th Russian celebration of victory in World War II, so that they are likely going to be hitting harder again. For more than a week, the Red Cross has been unable to get tens of thousands of civilians out of Mariupol. As the constant shelling continues, there have been bureaucratic problems again today. Is there anything that the UN can do to help keep those humanitarian corridors open?
So the discussions on those so-called corridors are conducted by the Red Cross, but also by the UN humanitarian group. You know, the head of the UN, Antonio Guterres, appointed a coordinator for Ukraine who's based in Lviv at the moment. And he, on behalf of all of us, conducts negotiation to ensure safe passage. We have done quite a lot of those corridors. I think today I have no news yet, but I heard there was an attempt to go to Severodonetsk, which is another city that has been hit very hard. Mariupol has been impossible for all the reasons that we know. So we continue to be available to bring in supplies and to help people come out, together with the Red Cross. But for that, we need to be sure that convoys are not shot at. If they're shot at, if they are impeded, they are prevented from going, we cannot do it. It's beyond us. We cannot force our way through for obvious reasons.
And what do the refugees need most of all from those of us in the United States and other, wealthier Western democracies?
First of all, can I use this opportunity to thank all the people that have contributed? It's been an amazing race of solidarity, which we haven't seen in decades, really. And this is governments, but also ordinary people and all over the world, including in the US. And I think that that's the most needed, financial contributions, so we can buy what is needed most, be it blankets, distribution of cash, which is very important in situations of high mobility. And there is another area that is growing as a big need is psychological support. It's psychological support because highly traumatized population. They had to drop a completely normal life, like life of any of us, from one day to the other and take the road of exile. And this causes enormous stress and trauma. So we need resources to help with psychological support. One quick thing, I was in Poland. The mayor of Warsaw told me that he has no more psychologists to care for the 300,000 Ukrainians that have arrived in Warsaw, in his city, because they're all working flat out with this population. So this is an area that we don't think about so often, but is very important in this context.
No, absolutely. It's a great pleasure to have this interview with you. Thank you very much for all of your experience.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's very important. Thank you.